Hello, this is a video about, this is live streaming about how to make peace at countries A through Z. The first thing is to understand how it is observable that names A through Z have another one involved with it. And it had sustained roles with this, and then modern religious messengers came about. And this breaching method has also use/s of the differences between the people who attack religions, the people who defend the religions, and the exceptions. It has that as an array used remotely criminally foreign influence/hyper criminally foreign influence. Nature itself shows us there's a difference between positive and hyper positive. It should, like, for example, how there could be criminal insidiousness natures of uses of truth to, for lies or to screen, between lies, to force equality of fact treatment nature as criminal insidiousness, enforce roles other than its body. For example, a breaching method that we could name a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, worse than war crimes. In this way, not having to entertain international law that could even get right because they were certain type of victim themselves. The difference of campuses A through Z with black people's whites of eyes. Others communicated about that than our founders behind James Madison's plan, and that which George Washington agreed to help. Then they communicated about that. See, this breaching method measures and maintains professionals as a certain type of victim/hyper victim, measured and maintained self-value roles, defending treatments of pretending the American Revolution was about a tea tax, when entrenched was that slavery method, sickly distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, and there were more than 13, and the only reason they came to a unity because it was against the law, and and the difference between the people, the only defense they had was the law, and that's also why they had no defense. The difference between the law, overt criminal enterprises, and private ones. The difference between the name, the uses of our name as a country here now, all of a sudden, because it forced. It already still was entrenched in northern South. Slavery method, singular. All rolls with it a whole bunch of methods, slavery methods. Whether you're better off by it or worse off by it, it doesn't matter. Entertain that. You guys haven't entertained other communicators for America's founders than they communicated for themselves. So a certain type of victim doesn't know how to respond to things, like why and how our names need to be used. I put a link to a video of President Carter, president/chief. No, with every president. Because that's a value only increasing because our founders, that Native Americans are part of our founders, even though they were fighting with themselves, just like brothers and sisters. If each country had like groups of brothers and sisters, they were going to have a debate or vote, not debate, communicate for themselves. Think about it, with the economic suits and ties, the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. Houses were built before they were born on the basic scale and nature of it. We're sickly distinctly northern South too. This is the foundation. People have things that they pretend are debatable tied to this. And or they have impositions upon them where others increasingly from other location /S at countries A through Z, a hyper foreign name, not just as, but to begin with the discernment of it, we must appreciate the scientific value of a human fact treating nature breaching method, having been one of the things that is true always. That was the sum value of those laws. Sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly northern colonies and southern colonies, and at the countries that were the surface possessions of, and as these systems individually grouped in together still. suits and ties, counters, exceptions as collusions, uses of names A through Z, through and as systems, tactical, ulterior, from the one that is hyper simultaneous that shows us we have two eyes. The other species bodies have two eyes distinctly, but also non distinctly, and simultaneously per what is further hyper simultaneous, per science. Who denies that has demonstrations of the same things of it, and things demonstrations the same. See, but we have experts on what's in demonstration of what. We have experts delusions wrought. It's especially regarding the nature of debate and regarding American history and the validity of something just because it's published. So how could they interpret Marbury versus Madison? Quote, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, unquote. And we're supposed to get the Constitution, quote, unabridged, unquote. And we're supposed to demonstrated what our founders communicated about, wanted us to communicate about the means by those abridgments, entrenched too deep. They could only force people to break the rules, and they have no way to survive except for a reliance upon our founders. And our founders couldn't put that in the book like that right away. And they had to, in other words. So people jump into other people's arguments in other words, the courts and the police forms were shown that they need to use criminally foreign influence readings of statutes to hide and self-value fake things in databases, change things in databases, including digital, on a mass scale, including about the outcome of cases, pretended by courts or through courts from people from off them. Like the FBI has roles with Harper courts in the Britain Superior Court and Connecticut's District Court, involved with people who've been next to the state capitol, involved with wire crime acts and methods, with various police departments, and with the names that used to be on my street. And then pretending I'm saying things about other people. They pretend those games. That's where the intelligence confesses. They do those things. They get themselves in other people's business dishonestly. These are also people at each of the campuses I went to connected to each other by roles with federal evidences, crimes, planting evidences, as names with the World Trade Center attack, also with their cousins and family members, with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, and their family members are involved with predicate acts on each of the campuses I went to. Timed uses of it. Timed uses of crazy things happening next to them. People next to them putting federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders. In the court's roles, making it look like we know people we weren't, we did what we didn't. They're changing and faking everything. Has something to do with their roles with the spots next to the state capitol, next to the parks, next to the news locations. The difference of that, they're all the same ones with the public television, same ones with the digital police, foreign and domestic, all kinds of psychiatry, delusions, or natures and methods of predicate acts with facts, and delusions, and natures of organized crime and rules. And the difference of it there, it's only concentrated there. Because the breaching method has a discern identity of relativity to all formal identities of the sciences. Forgiveness is because where we can discern the breaching method, we can discern also other things, others ourselves, maintained by its method, blamed for nature's demonstrations of itself. That's one of the reasons why and how so long we have had how we have black people's whites of eyes. For example, how it is we have the same color eyes, and those are the colors, and different color eyes at the same time, or then there are exceptions. Nature itself is teaching us about difference. It is showing us when we appreciate that it's identity. It's complete identity. It's complete identity's relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that, inseparable from the only extents we could discern. with the extent we could discern of anything, any subject individually grouped in together. It shows us that we know there's an extent of time we know about was true in the past. We know that there is one now, active group realities we know about, and there are ones to come. So we cannot separate the people the world over are forcing individual leaders to fight about economics, leaving out how the breaching method employed that. And our founders communicated for us to understand that. But to do this properly, we have to blame it on the hyperforeign, because the hyperforeign knew that that country, first it would get locations, areas, states, needed to counter its fact-cheating nature, as it did. You know, negative value nature, progressions, acts, natures, wrongly. And as collusion is not realizing more and more effectively. In other words, the natures of sophistication that are manifest now. The nature, they force equality, as the criminal insidious nature of debate regarding this. So other was and is communicated for James Madison. This takes part with uses of truths for lies, like that which they said, leaving out the breaching method uses of a method / S of measuring and maintaining collusions with itself against selves, or that body was sensed, and everyone around them. So that method is still being used on a mass scale, the foreign and domestic. So China were they're forced to entertain suits and ties because of, in other words, there's technology and there's logistical threats where the only voices of the people involved with the military, for example, are countries A through Z. They have come through campuses that stayed self-value, roles with uses of that self-value, criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. This is a difference racket. This can't afford to have discerned properly that which is at the beginning of the Old Testament that says only depend right here, where the names of the people of the sciences will come together. This needs to keep blame on other things, others yourselves. Self-value means to get away with that. How to pretend not to realize that. In other words. And the same thing at the beginning of the Quran. It gives an individual, it dictates to the individual not to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason if they don't agree with it. See, you guys are preventing. So in other words, if a girl didn't believe she should have to wear a thing, she only has to cite that part of the Quran. In other words, which says all she has to do is to be a good Muslim is to be, is to be honest. Are they going to call the name of the hyper-simultaneous, per my transliteration of it, of an English translation, transliteration of the Quran? In other words, are they going to call that identity the hyper-simultaneous Allah or not? And the Quran dictates to have love to people, even if they don't agree to call it Allah. And a lot of times where people are making, in other words, you guys aren't allowing a defense of the Quran in sequence. And you're using the name anyway. You wanted to pretend. Or the Old Testament. You guys want to defend the books out of sequence. Both the Quran and the Old Testament, only right here you have to defend. Understand? The rest, it speaks about good and bad, but it speaks about it where and how you guys are entertaining roles. Hyper additionally from, but also with that original methods, use of those that as narratives, natures, uses of criminal insidious natures of positive and negative simultaneously, collusions with itself, realizing or not, and mostly not. to keep other things, others, or selves blamed for nature's demonstrations of it, which is part of the answer why and how we've had the scientific value of a breaching method left out when nature itself demonstrates it. And our founders did. How they get away with debating this also makes self-valued rules of use /s of time at all locations /s. Also simultaneously criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought, and or roles with the exceptions, changing and faking exceptions, exception nature. As criminal insidiousness nature, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a police, I'm not a journalist. So the journalists and the police forms and their family members and neighbors, all collusions attaching people to fake conversations, fake things. They'd be using investigators at campuses, that training the police forms remotely, all kinds of natures and methods of organized crime, like predicate acts methods. So you've had people speaking about crimes this whole time at countries A through Z as a certain type of victim /hyper victim. With that difference, or the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, or the insidiousness of people A through Z. Because other things, others, or selves are measured and maintained, blamed for things that nature demonstrated for us to blame it on. But when we, like the breaching method, but we'll observe right where we could observe per science, a breaching method was true always. That which was causing problems, in generating them. Other things, others, or selves are being forced blamed and dishonestly, but also with delusions. And the difference between the people A through Z or the campus, that's why it's important too. The campus is involved with research and polling. They're criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, or every location /s. There is a projection where our difference is. So Wethersfield adults and kids recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with like China and all the countries in the news, and they're not supposed to speak about that, but they communicate about it, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. And the difference between, in other words, so these are people roles with predicate acts with facts, sick things, and roles with justice. They call it justice. As collusions with all natures of crime scenes, increasingly, because of where and how that's used remotely. They have wire crime acts methods, all kinds of collusions and databases. In other words, and the difference between the Saudi attackers or the ones with the predicate acts at the court next to the World Trade Center, because they also had collusions with people next to and at the World Trade Center, like ones named Demoro and Scalora, involved also with people as the court that switched the date of legal papers from inside the court, as was proven after, and names on both sides of that case, and people tied to them and their family members. Also used for predicate acts by people from Connecticut involved with the Manhattan, interstates, and Washington, D.C. courts, and relative, news predicate acts, and forced child abusers, leaders of kids, first forced, like, a Wethersfield a Wethersfield principal child defender had more then and now involved with them. And they used the news reports to plant more roles with it, various natures of organized crimes between the campuses. And they're implying that it has to do, in other words, they don't have anything legitimate with their roles with unmarked police forms and criminal enterprises and cultural narratives and natures and religious spots and notions by good and evil. For example, we have criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments and names treatments, identity treatments simultaneously at locations A through Z, everywhere the species body is. Now, they already hurt each other and tortured each other so long for the breaching method, exactly where and how it needs it to lock it state, to keep a nature of criminal insidiousness, blame the other things others themselves. Already did it so long till that was real, but it never stopped being used remotely of that too. It's worse than any evil that we've had discerned. And we can just get through this, but you need to follow mandated law properly. Criminally foreign influence readings of statutes regarding what's online, they've been changing what's digital. The FBI, Connecticut, has a whiting forensics increasingly involved with wire crimes with Connecticut police departments in the same house/S, involved with retired police chiefs and their intimate ties and extended family members, also involved with predicate acts with the news and with intercampuses, also with medical offenders, foreign and domestic, people from Afghanistan, people from Korea, people from South Korea, people from Italy, people from all the countries that have rules with psychiatry. They're putting mass fake things in databases, in delusions. Fake conversations, fake ties to kids, increasingly until they're adults, and then too, as ones with judges and prosecutors personally and professionally involved, speaking fake things, planting evidences with a whole bunch of names from other areas on the streets of the people, so they can make this method keeps showing it's relative because they're already shown they need to hide. For example, fake conversations with me. Connecticut courts, more than three courts, or at least three courts, and the state judicial branch offices, names next to it, and the corrections offices, increasingly roles with the Saudi attackers and with the difference of Saudi Arabia's roles or Americans' roles in the other countries, etc. Like Pakistan. Pakistan has roles with psychiatry families and through the sale of businesses, like a business at the Saustein Highway, Town Line Drive, and businesses at the corner. There's a mobile gas station with the sale of it, and there's a Kerr family also involved in a bait, a Dominic Abate, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. These are people involved with various agencies, interstates, and intercities, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders. I walked by him one time at Dominic Abate at that corner after the World Trade Center attack. Years before, he was brought up in confession. In other words, these are people planting evidences, roles, and then spreading, with the former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and directly and indirectly as the people involved with the Saudis in the different countries with what they call the coalition and all of that. WFSB Channel 3 of Connecticut faked conversations with me about the World Trade Center attack. And they faked conversations with me with others too. And those conversations contained predicate acts, collusions with all natures of crime scenes and natures of criminals. There were murders like a murder of Greg Kyler. And WFSB and Fox News, they have roles with stories along New Britain avenues, like in Hartford, Connecticut, and intercities. With these are people on off town lines with the name DeMorrow and Colo, involved, for example, with state police families and different police forms. And courts, judges and prosecutors and their family members who have roles of predicate acts with facts, identity theft, fraud, slanders, with a whole bunch of different countries. And further medical sexual offenders of kids, including with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. And Weathersfield police switching and forging names and refusing to get on paper since I was a kid. They also pretended that with WFSB and other news that I had conversations with them as a kid. When the kids that did have conversations with them and the police had collusions with overt criminal enterprises, and judges and prosecutors, families increasingly involved with child abusers, these are kids' first wars. and retired Weathersfield police chiefs in their intimate ties involved with it, and people pretending passions and emotions against strangers, increasingly connected, as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack. So get them on paper. They're also pretending they want privacy and wanting people to use their names or not use it, so they keep putting fake things in databases, staying collusions because they repeated fake things, like about me. The King family does not know me, and they reportedly confessed, demonstrate, confirm love with their neighbors with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and federal evidences crimes against me. Intercities, next to wet spots, next to Fox Connected News, next to WFSB, and as collusions with the difference of that, because they have wire crime acts and methods there too, because they won't fix it. They have to fix the big conversations with me. WFSB. We can only speak for ourselves regarding the law. They also attach me to fake and change communications with everyone around me. And that's also what I caught them doing at each of the campuses. They have placements there. A whole bunch of people tied to the name Mayano and Zeno. And there was a Zeno and Luigi Guerrero involved with identity theft, fraud, slander with mayors. Has some mayors and medical families involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, try to take pictures of people, then pretend they had conversations with each other. These are people also with sequence shifts and with the courts, judges, and prosecutors switching and forging names and preventing writing. And I asked Judge Napolitano many times because they have the social media. Joshua Julian is also one of the ones with WFSB, WTNH, and Fox Connecticut News. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by others in himself, by others that they brought the KKK into it too. Mark Violet. Increasingly, people from Hartford Hospital have federal evidence as crimes with the intelligence communities and their roles with the World Trade Center attack, fake conversations with me, and about the World Trade Center attack too there at Hartford Hospital, where they forced mental evaluations of people, where judges and prosecutors and doctors, foreign and domestic, tied to the same house/S, involved with wire crimes with the police, and more people tied to proving forced child abusers, leaders of kids, and now further. And with this Leahy family, a whole bunch of people like a Rick Cianfaglione is involved with wire crimes with an O'Brien and Cololo, with mayors and people that were in my first through third grade classes who have roles with federal evidences crimes, with various natures of federal criminals behind my back, putting fake things in databases, spreading rumors I don't even know about. And then, in other words, and uses of corners to make fake exceptions of people knowing each other, to make it look like they knew them before that on a mass scale, because they've been using the differences of all natures of identities of law. These are some black KKK themed military families that are also off the state judicial branch offices involved with differences rackets at the corners of the buildings in the schools. And in other words, there a whole bunch of people. How are you? So I forgot this. I put some link. I put a link because in the early 70s, President Carter and China. See, China was here before America was a country, and we were there. In other words, humanity as a human species body of individual bodies. It is grouped as a species by what groups also fish, birds. In other words, all the other species, they have quality aspects of nature that's not invented by them. We didn't invent it. There's a further hyper simultaneous that comes with this, which is simultaneous as ourselves distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, further hyper simultaneous. Per science, there is relativity. Each science, the description of it proper and honest, shows that it's about relativity / hyper relativity. See, people entertain things like theory and use of names, people's names, but countries' names, the way the breaching method knew, and it keeps. So, in other words, the locations, areas, and states. In other words, all the countries are fighting for the same thing that no one wants, which is they want to fight about the economics. And there's exceptions because everyone's getting over on each other with that. But everyone's getting over on each other with that because not one side had possession of their name properly with that. James Madison's communications are measured and maintained, changed in our faces. James Madison's plan is what gave the courage or means enforced the original 13 colonies to be. George Washington agreed to use that plan. Roles measured and maintained, self-valuing, blaming it on other things, others, ourselves, like a T-tax. That's used to measure and maintain roles in defensive jobs, values, treatment as criminal and citizens' natures. There was slavery entrenched, torture method, an extortion method. And we're supposed to be honest about this. We're supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. If we were honest about that, we would have brought up the torture, extortion, slavery method, how it was sickly distinctly against everyone, and how it was not distinctly against everyone. Even though it was not distinctly against everyone, and everyone wanted and needs to counter it, it's functional that they're not going to allow either the quality of fact treatment nature to be, let alone to protract regarding how to counter it. So with James, I don't know if his name is James Carter, Jimmy Carter. I believe that might be short for James. But Mr. Carter, President / Chief Carter. So they're trying to make uses of our names where they'll agree to use the name the same way. So we can speak about and argue or whatever with our names. Because nature forces that, but now we're being forced through these systems that are not economic. But there are logistical impositions because the natures of, we had to rely with not one country have possession of their name, first of all. In other words, so we didn't fight just against England. England, Spain, France, themselves were already, England doesn't remember the history of English because this breaching method forced persuaded people in defense of themselves to do so as fact treatment nature, more and more as collusions with what they were trying to counter, not realizing until it was too late, and then still not realizing how it could use all natures of sophistication, remotely criminally foreign influence / hyper-criminally foreign influence. Its self-value roles or self-sensing for itself through ourselves. It's, in other words, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and their differences interbranch. They defended and went against those differences exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needed and set them up to. You're not supposed to bring up the black and white, leaving out how nature itself communicates how we have the same colorized, different colorized, the same time because we're being shown difference, hyper different. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, there are logistical impositions with nuclear weapons and this and that. We've had this since the 80s. That's a whole lot of energy that's incapable of defending itself and affording, being about and project and continuing positive value nature, progressions, acts in nature, and as fact treatment nature where it can cause evolutions, fruits, gifts, means out of nowhere. So our countries, our campuses' names, A through Z, we have to change the books by using how they're, by not changing what's there now and showing how it's criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought logic, and natures of logic as criminal insidiousness nature. So I'm an expert on the nature of English grammar, and I can make you guys this. In other words, I'm not even a lawyer, but I can make you experts in law if you appreciate how the predicate is valued to English, the same way the predicate act is valued to the law. And this is because nature itself shows us to reason that there is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. It is why, for example, we need more than one name for the verb. It is why for example, we grapple with subjects individually grouped and simultaneous. Species bodies are individual bodies of individuals, a grouped difference /s. All differences, plural, are being generated by one identity of value /value progression that nature itself shows us is most probable and practical to convict. For example, regarding theories regarding where we came from, but others in place of that, like a Big Bang theory. In other words, there is a remote possession of the names of differences. This breaching method knew that there's in other words, the name America, no one agrees about it. One of the reasons no one agrees about it is because the differences between campuses A through Z, the best ones and the worst ones, and the difference is used by this breaching method. Used self-value roles, needs, and natures measured to measure and maintain. Roles with its method /s left out. Self-value not left out with logic, where logic is demonstrating that. So we have summaries in the nature of of communications. A certain type of victim /hyper victim that needs to use defense of their identities, what they know, leaving out the real answers, which is names A through Z have been used as systems tactical ulterior from the one that is making communications with us with differences of A through Z. How it is a distinct identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. That one being discernible through relativity /hyper relativity, the relativity to other species that are not our own, but they're distinct, non-distinct simultaneously, per that further hyper simultaneous, per science. So where are you from, Kim? So in other words, I put a link to Iran and America. Iran wants to kill the president and his advisors. And Americans and everyone's been killing each other, Russians and Americans, since the 80s. And so we had movies about this, and they're telling us, calm down. We got it, but there was no one capable of speaking for security at countries A through Z because no one has possession. How could they can't even be honest about Mao or about James Madison. They say, Mao killed all these people. What do you think all those wars were about? Because there was still roles with an entrenched breaching method, North and South, with slavery, with fact-cheating nature, collusion with slavery, with use /s of it, way worse than any of the discernible roles with it, or differences of roles with it use /s, because it was its use. It designed everything to keep everything increasingly blamed on other things, others, or self. Right, where, and how it knew. In other words, so what it did, it was measure and maintain. We know that it forced words and lies about themselves and them to entertain speech that they would not have entertained, things that they would not have entertained. They show that the Constitution was abridged, and it being and having been relative to that which was below the foundation, only allowed to be fathomed So when it would unfold, you know, where it didn't have perfect control of everyone, it had better than perfect control of everyone. This way, since before modern religious messengers were founded, I mean, were born, and since before modern countries leaders were born. See, a leader is an individual above locations, areas, and states. Where locations, areas, and states never, there's still suits and ties, counters, exceptions with suburbs that were designed before America's founders were born. There are homes that were built before they were born. And the suburbs were designed tactically to nature to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. And reliance upon the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures is it to be collusions with criminal and seditious natures of them. Used as simultaneous collusions with all the negatives to hide the identity of relativity to us, of the breaching method itself, and of that generating a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise itself, which is theoretical, but it is more probable that this is what is referred to as the devil or as the shaitan, where we hear about things through the nature of religion from people. We don't know. Like I didn't read the Old Testament or the Quran. I just read that part. That's all you have to understand. It depends. It's right up to here in the part that came before it, where it's parsing good and bad as itself, through itself. In other words, see our contemplations. Then now they go through jobs and systems, tactical ulterior, from that one that is hypernated pure. That's why it gives us the means to appreciate the difference between president / chief and why and how that is pronounced. That difference was pronounced, left pronounced. So we have at countries A through Z needs for solutions and to admit. So in other words, there's needs for countries A through Z to blame immediately, including when they're right, but not to, which we have to get attached to this the breaching method. In other words, when people say, "Oh, it's the white man," Native Americans are white. No, it's a whites of eyes are white, and black pupils are black. And this is again. So we have this nature of debate that is hyper evidentially recorded, being and having been maintained, confined. We must free the mind. Vaccines. In other words, we need hyper forgiveness. Nations on the edge of on the edge of nuclear proliferation. We could set up a whole bunch of positive means that will agree to stack and make them work for the rest of the world to help. Temporary with the countries with nuclear weapons. We'll make negatives into hyper positives and check to make sure we didn't make criminal and seditious natures of positives. The whole world would jump behind. It's like, in other words, if the nuclear countries all agree to, you guys could break the laws together and just do really great things for countries that really need it. And everybody longs that. All exceptions and exception nature, when they come to logistics, we could change that. In other words, we could use, as long as we're honest, we can put a, in other words, space means come out of nowhere. Space / existence. The ground, its identity, relationship to itself, and the means to it. Market values with the homes and stuff like that. don't forget they were designed before in the suburbs, let alone the cities, overtly, unthinkably, tactically denatured, criminally foreign influenced, roles with the constitutional abridgment system that we will here address, boxing, and with little rap kind friends. So before it's a no, we in that theater there's a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, a proverbial devil that came before modern countries, came before modern religions, messengers, and it hurt locations, areas, and states of the human species body to get them to counter wrong and then to defend that syntactically. And then it did built on that and made people increasingly simultaneously incapable of using where and how and why the sciences share an identity, increasingly incapable of allowing the discernment of that by others and or by themselves at other locations slash s relative to how this works. In other words, nature will continue to demonstrate negative value, nature progressions, acts, and natures, just per the way the suburbs are designed to force the ground, its identity, and the earth, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value, only increasing value of the nature system of that. It will cause negative value, nature progressions, acts, and natures, like criminal insidiousness natures, acts like predicate acts. So I'm not a lawyer, but we have black pupils, whites of eyes. And we have other, in other words, and we know that those laws were predicate acts with facts laws. Collusions, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes and precedents while pretending other, because that was only capable of being. And the differences between the voices that were, quote, white or, quote, black as legal identities that were all predators, only capable of being it, and tools further hyper simultaneously used. That's why we should not leave out the hyper simultaneous, because revelations come this way. Many pray, vaccines. See, but the differences between the people defending the religions, they're going to use the religions because they know more to get over the people when it says that. But the people attacking them too, the difference between that and the exceptions, that's also manifest used at other locations. The difference is so what we have all these crazy criminal enterprises, well, this technology and things like it. The same people calling them criminals and trying to reform them, all kinds of natures of organized crime and roles with criminally foreign influence slash hyper criminally foreign influence use slash S of all locations slash S. Russians and Americans recorded capacity demonstrated confirmed they have collusions at Harvard Hospital and at fire campuses and with communications locations and with the lawyers of the FBI and the police and the Weathersfield police chiefs, etc. Now, lawyers originally and still all sides of criminal and civil cases, the cases themselves, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought, used to measure and maintain all speech, decisions, and language syntax, leaving out the breaching methods roles, leaving out how actually see, we're supposed to be grouped and bound, A through Z, our names, as a human species body of individual bodies. We're supposed to be simultaneously independent. All group differences were in demonstration, and with demonstrations of this, but that's through a system of communications we are forbid the fact, human nature, equality, because all natures of location slash S, titles and things like that, you call those self-value roles changing what is recorded, what we say. In other words, so these are predicate acts with facts that WFSB recorded capacity demonstrated confirmed interstates they have roles with their sources and intelligence communities, including the judges, prosecutors, their family members, and people next to them. The same with Fox Connecticut News, the same ones. And these are people involved. Even Gail King has roles increasingly with state police families interstates, involved with writing forensics, increasingly involved with crime scenes and digital crimes where they fake and change digital evidences, like with Joshua Julian, who's also one of the ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, with people, with cousins of people that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed have roles of predicate acts with him on my street, and with the Wethersfield Police and other police forms with them, state police. These are state police families, interstates too. As one's timed collusions with a whole bunch of different countries, shipping families, criminal enterprises, and private criminal enterprises. See, everyone speaking through other contains much more than you realize. They're putting fake things in the databases at each of the campuses. There's a Kevin Harris who has a mother involved also with judges, prosecutors, and doctors, foreign and domestic, who have been putting fake things and fake conversations with the kids and their parents, and changed ones too, and putting fake, collusion with crime scenes and on campuses from off them, putting fake things in databases and influencing roles with that. And then with U/S of it, which also turned out to be World Trade Center predicate acts roles. It is important to get them, like Judge Napolitano, I begged him to get them on paper, one name and sequence. They have roles also with fire departments, intercities. And everyone wants to say, I'm not having a group conversation. And the individual conversation, everyone's too afraid to have it. All exceptions, they're faking about that too. In other words, you have a number of police departments. You have West Hartford Police, fire departments. You have New Britain, Wethersfield, Rocky Hill, Hartford, involved, even campuses that train them, involved with corners of streets, identity theft, wire crimes, and with child offenders, leaders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, criminally foreign influence with the prosecutors, a whole bunch of concentrated with like probate court judges because of their roles with elderly homes and with veterans homes and with prisons and with hospitals. These, but also Superior Court judge speak and judges' role speaking with people speaking fake things in records, changing records, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and sense. So, in other words, worse than crimes are predicate acts, many ways. In other words, we have people that put killers away for crimes where they had collusion with the body dumping spots, the names next to it. Maybe they wouldn't even kill it. In other words, like a whole bunch of body dumping spots, like a body dumping, and a girl who was dragged to her death from next to Hartford Hospital is increasingly involved with the houses and businesses there. Like people on Iolo's Kitchen, a DeMoro's Market, and there's a house related to a Jonathan Maiano, involved with all kinds of identity theft and frauds and planting evidences on and off in sequence shifts at campuses, identity theft, frauds, fake motivations for it. Sometimes it's others that influence them to federal evidences, crimes. Sometimes it's themselves and their family members. They bring their family members into it. And everyone around them does that. In other words, relative to this. People become cowards where they don't understand, and they're just blind leadership. In other words, so the FBI has roles. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, has roles with a whole bunch of people and next to Hartford Hospital, and next to Fox Connecticut News, and next to WFSB, refusing to identify themselves properly with Wethersfield Police, switching and forging names. So Judge Napolitano has roles with this by not hearing me. In other words, because they have wire crime methods, they have fake conversations with me as a kid, and I was an adult. at the police station too. And the kids that did go to the police station to have conversations with them, they used them to have conversation with themselves, and they brought and hide their roles those kids and themselves with criminal enterprises, plural. And between campuses, kids don't even go to my campus, including with one like a Ray Reynolds came, a Ray Cole came to my street and went to my school when he was in fourth grade. Already from first to third grade, mayors and people from other countries had collusion. They brought up China's name. I don't even know who brought it up. I don't know the people. They would time adults use the difference between adults and kids or maturity, immaturity, relative to where and how they confess and demonstrate and communicate tactically ulterior from what they know they do. Like about in other words, there's not one identity of the law that has integrity relative to this. How they make when they speak about black or white, the relativity of it. You guys leave out the breaching method exactly the way it knew. It could measure and maintain only capable of being. And if anyone's going to start speaking what nature shows us to the way to look at history by appreciating how that breaching method was sickly distinctly against Native Americans, distinctly against the colonists, sickly distinctly against the states, sickly distinctly against their efforts to overcome that. But also sickly, non-distinctly, everyone would leave that out. And kids try to show this in that sense. And when adults try to show it, it's sense, but we do it at the same time. So that's why we have to address WFSB's roles with this. WFSB colluded with Saudis, and Saudis colluded with WFSB. I don't even know all their names. Like with next to them too. And then they pretend it's personal. In other words, they attach me to fake conversations with themselves, with the officers refusing to identify themselves. And while they, as roles, they're forced to proven anyway, principal child offender, also with more digital crimes with kids and more obscure pictures on Twitter involved, even since he was put in jail for that. There's still people involved then and now with it. And a former police chief from Weathersfield named Cintron. And he reportedly has roles with people. Can't make this up. I don't know them. God barely know them. None of them. The Mazzucato family and their roles with a corner of Elm Street and Route 3 has roles with a whole bunch of people there from years before that involved with the police chief Cintron and with the people with wire crimes and mail crimes and with extended family members like a Phil Cololo is further involved with whiting forensics and this Joshua Julian with the principal child offender and some KKK black themed military and people on the state judicial branch offices and corrections offices involved with connects there and intercampuses and all natures of crime scenes, including when they catch people doing things wrong because they've been collusions at those spots. Like Weathersfield Pizza has wire crimes and Weathersfield police refusing to identify themselves and planting evidences with them, fake ties and fake natures of ties to me, to them. And with the educators of Stephen Stocko also involved with him, fake ties, planting evidences, federal evidences, crimes, and with his educators too. In other words, who was your dad, Kim? Kim, we have some foreign and domestic. With their differences, there are collusions with various natures of industries that if you entertain that, you can't afford. And then pretend you and could speak for things like crimes, then can't entertain to be, let alone to protract convictions and conviction nature proper regarding such. So I know science shows that there are countless Americans who want to refer to this as a predicate acts with facts method, and we want to have addressed how James Madison's communications and his plan and George Washington's use of it, we have other communicated in place of that, and how they're using truths for lies. This breaching method took to roles self-value just because they have a job, their self-value, it's about T-tax, etc. Nature's communicating other, not just our founders did. The only reason people had grouped agenda, okay, we're against the T-tax, is because they had the roles which enabled the Constitution to get. We were told to get it unabridged. We were told to get it understood that we have rights that are too numerous to list. We were told to get Marbury versus Madison. Real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. But again, James Madison's identity is still stolen, and self-value rules of that are still standing. This is also relative to where and to how. Some of there's wire crime acts and methods that the various police forms, we're going to examine more of them if they don't hurry up and give me a response for their roles with the social media pages of the campuses and with the police forms in the courts switching and forging names. Let's get them on paper, because these are also families of, in other words, they have no legitimate roles with kids at all ages. So get them on paper, please, America. Excuse me. There's a judge in Napolitano with a judging freedom who worked for Fox Connecticut News, or worked for Fox News. But Fox Connecticut News and names next to them with the intelligence community. They have that location is one of the things that influenced them to roles with the World Trade Center attack. They have predicate acts with facts, intercities and intercampuses connected to that location and use of it. The difference of it there or their wire crimes at Fox Connecticut News, at WFSB, at WTNH. And they won't want to do this anymore if you follow mandated law. Make them follow mandated law, but they're being influenced from off their locations to make more things up. See, they collude blindly with directors of agencies and generals and things like that. There are foreign and domestic generals also involved with the spots next to the Connecticut State Capitol, like Fox Connecticut News and the buildings next to them, who are also increasingly involved with like a Detective Dillon and involved with Enzo Fienza and his cousin and their family members next to the state capitol and next to Dan King and his mother and his father, who was a victim, God forbid, I'm sorry, of the World Trade Center attack. But they were involved with predicate acts against me before that. And regarding the validity of me saying that, even if they don't know it, that's why they should get on paper get the Wethersfield police on paper from the names forging and switching and pretending passions and emotions. They try to make it look like I signed up for they're putting paid conversations, change communications with everyone at campuses. So please, because these are also people involved with the borders problems, because they have differences, records. They all run in. Families of fire campuses, families of overt criminal enterprises and private ones, they all run in, and the people that work at Harvard Hospital, the doctors, the nurses, they have collusions with each other. They have lawyers there. They have the judges speaking fake things in records. They're all delusions wrought too. A whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital have timed collusions with proven child abusers, leaders of kids. And they have fake conversations with me. They pretended through the mail. These are people involved with mail and wire crime methods and digital crimes. and remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of Judge Napolitano, preventing me mandated law with the courts that prevented me writing since I was a kid so they could stack more fake things and collusions. And so again, they have roles with people that know my name from Wethersfield who are various nationalities and things that are not Chinese, but they have roles with Chinese, and they have roles with Korea, and they have roles with Italians. In other words, and the difference between that, there's differences brackets per that difference, which is being, nature's communications itself, where we have the same colorized, different colorized, same time, as the exceptions that come in demonstration of the same thing. We have the same identity of hyper simultaneous, its identity relationship to itself, and its roles with positive and negative simultaneously, the ways we know, but then further hyper additionally. But we are not being allowed to appreciate the hyper additional ways because of the ways we know are entertained fake. We can't afford how and why finite details are changed and left out, how grouped ones and simultaneous ones like this. Because with nature's communications too, the breaching methods communications is also a scientific value that is inseparable from proper descriptions of American history. See, this breaching method uses what witch trials are about, even if they're made up regardless of who made them up. They're about that breaching method's entrenchments and a singular method by it through a whole bunch of other methods that it propagated. It propagated only capable of being juxtaposed totally distinct, but also non-distinct natures and methods of organized crimes, criminal and citizen's natures, cities. They're tactically denatured, reliant upon systems, tactical terror, and only having known that. Those prisons associated with them. So Connecticut has roles. Central Connecticut State University has roles with people running prisons. They have roles also with all sides in the World Trade Center attack. And with UConn has foreign and domestic military and roles with intelligence in the different departments at Central Connecticut State University and campuses I went with the FBI and other agencies and people associated with this. Mark Violet, I don't know who his teachers were. I never had a campus with him. And he has a brother, Mike Violet. And the roles with it near where they live now, where they used to live, increasingly involved with this. And the people planting evidence on all sides of my house, increasingly with fire departments involved names, and state police, people involved with forensics, also involved with, so Sandy Hook also has Pakistani families involved, and people on off the state corrections offices involved with people with the name Demaro and Cololo, involved with predicate acts with facts and federal evidence crimes, all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the Wethersfield police forging and switching names, and judges speaking fake things in the records with them, and news at the same time, and the preventing identifications of themselves has something to do with their roles in the fire department, people with names on all sides of the Connecticut, the Wethersfield Community Center too. Please get them on paper, one name in sequence, Judge Napolitano. So we got So someone please tell Judge Napolitano, and someone please share this. Because the plan, in other words, we have obligations to explain why and how our name is forced to be used. We are forced to entertain economies that are incapable of evaluating individuals A through Z, of him, let alone those most forsaken. Now we have to use each other's names. We have to fight with each other's names like brothers and sisters, like brothers and sisters and sisters must fight with each other verbally. about how to get over something. They don't know how to, neither one of them knows how to get over unpack treatment nature properly. And we need to come to the best, not just the best, the better than perfect answer, but it's here. All we have to do is address it with anyone who needs a nuclear problem. I mean, a nuclear war and defenses like this, the whole species will agree to help them. Especially before more come into it, we'll put that as the platform too, as a censor. As a censor, not just the same thing, as a censor to make sure that we're positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, it means out of nowhere. Keep coming. Otherwise, we're sensing we're doing something wrong. An entire species behind the same plan, better than free. We use pantheism too. Pantheism was a science about the identity of the hyper-simultaneous. That's more probable and practical to convict. All kinds of criminally foreign influence readings of statutes attaching people on to fake conversations and change communications about religions on a mass scale. Because, so they can pretend people had delusions, but they have to make things up because their delusions wrought. Black pupils. So in other words, we have to get mandated law followed. The differences of the Saudis' roles in America, where there's a possession of our names, uses, and defenses of it. Then they ask questions to people, and they leave out the breaching method, how it forced us to be part of economies, how it forced us to be scared of threats from other countries, while we weren't even one. And all exceptions that we are one, but still, it's fake sides. The North and South were both supposed to fight about slavery, the method of it. But they couldn't say that directly because they would have traced it right back to who said it. We have to follow our founders, what they communicated to us, to understand the plan of James Madison and the founders behind him, distinct from the rest of the founders, let alone the presidents. And then George Washington agreed to help that plan in them. Vaccines, ahem. Then, Capis Marcius, then. In other words, so. Try to like social, bully, identity theft, fraud, slanders, criminally foreign influence uses of. This breaching method makes the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and three branches of government and the news people use as fake motivations their family members and the people around them. People make confessions to others when they're alone. That's because a certain type of victim / hyper victim is only capable of doing it. The law obligates not to change what people say when they know predicate acts, like fake conversations about the World Trade Center attack. Please, Gail King, do what's right and get to Gary Sasso with the Gary Sasso is one of the names next to New Britain, Connecticut State University, who's recorded and involved with state police families and their educators, intercities through time, and on off campuses with foreign and domestic military and medical families, personally and professionally involved with judges and prosecutors, as names with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and roles with differences rackets. Whole bunch of different countries, they use rights to lie and to hide things, like how they share hundreds of countries on off campuses together. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, even when they're not even apart with those groups. Those differences are used remotely. They have some black themed, KKK themed, the difference racket, Latino themed intelligence families with the differences rackets, fake conversations, falsified police reports, roles, rackets with the identity thefts and frauds with the names on the state judicial branch offices and the corrections offices, and the spots next to it, like Weathersfield Pizza, is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with wire crimes of Weathersfield Police, and those names like Afianza and with the Dan King and others like with the Demoro, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and one with the name Oliveri planting evidences with that in that area with them. There are fake exceptions and trying to make little plant illusions with them, with the intelligence community and the people out of the state judicial branch. These are people on Elm Streets in Rocky Hill, Weathersfield, involved also with predicate acts on Trinity College. There's little girls that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed when I was a kid, and then at Trinity College. There's a Joshua Stryker who's been lying about himself and about me, fake conversations with me behind my back, and at campuses behind my back since I was a kid. He doesn't even know me. Trying to make it fake extraction by what timing where I'm going to be. One exception at Eric Oliveri's house. One time I went there, and after he was already, in other words, and had to lie about that. And what I said about that on Facebook, you know, in other words, it was like half true. It was true. It was used for not for lie, but to measure to get them to communicate more. Because that's how I know all these confessions. They have rules with UPS, with predicate acts, and with teachers I had who are involved with some black KKK themed, Confederate flag themed medical sexual offenders of kids. And I did leaders of the kids, and then personal roles with them. And I did, then when I have conversations and pretend they never even had a conversation with me. In other words, they're just repeating fake things, and they're screening roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones in a whole bunch of other countries with the same family members and time use of the same location / at corners of streets too. All sides in criminal and civil cases, they are recorded how they are maintained. You know, collusions with the predicate acts with fax predators who speak for the law. It's only capable of being. We could, and so Judge Napolitano, he won't want to be this way when we show him how natural law works. And because nature itself will show this, we have to show him the predicate acts that WFSB had and has, and the police forms, like with the Joshua Julian and the Anthony Agnew and others with the social media. There's a Ronald Adams. I don't know him. I know there's a Joshua Julian's, one of the ones with the Principal Child Defenders Facebook page, who's involved with the retired police chiefs with the Cololo and Smith families that lives near me. And the other ones on all sides, they're trying to make fights between us because they have people at Hartford Hospital that have been putting threats and planting evidence on my street tied to them too, with the police switching and forging names and the courts preventing writing because they have confessions tied to this, the same thing. These are ones in Connecticut that have rules in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center that day too. Made it look, took legal papers timely stamped and brought to the court and made them look as if they were they post-dated them and made them look as if they'd been handed in late. And that was proven after the World Trade Center attack. But the day of the World Trade Center attack, there was a collusion from inside the court and names on all sides of that court, their legal representation and sources. They were also the ones that were interstates, roles with the names next to and at the World Trade Center too, like Scalora and King, and people tied to them like DeMar and Oliveri. And there's a Joshua Stryker who's also involved with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, with identity theft, fraud, slanders, federal evidence crimes at Trinity College, and with an officer named Darth Vader. That's how they're playing punk games. An officer, Darth Vader. And they have a fire department next to them with people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that there's a Joe Aiello involved with predicate acts with them and people all along Route 3. There's even, in other words, get them on paper, please, people. Fix the World Trade Center attack. They have more obscure pictures on Twitter rolls with the FBI too, and with the name Ian. As the rules further with the use of the parks next to them, with the mayors planting evidences. I don't know the Mark and Kevin Carone. I only know them with people tied to them making confessions about their roles with intelligence community at Central Connecticut State University and religious spots and people involved with proven child abusers, leaders of kids, First Forest. These are people with their cultural indifferences and things like that, trying to plant fake ties, fake natures ties to people while other people take pictures. In other words, has something to do with their roles with their spots near the corner of Southstein Highway and Town Line Drive with a Perone and a Kerr. And people say I don't know the rest of them, their names. And Dominic Abate recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. A whole bunch of people confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that Dominic Abate is involved with that. I never saw Dominic Abate around in my life. The only time I ever saw him in person was right there. And we had no communications. So these are also people that are increasingly planting evidences next to campuses and Hartford Hospital, and with the girl who got dragged to her death, involved with the Mark Violet, and Justin Govinskis too. I never had a class with him either. He's one of the ones who rolls with foreign domestic military into religious spots that were putting fake things in medical that are putting fake things in databases with their family members, identity theft, fraud, slanders. These are people that, if you see this person, they would never go online. These are people, these are investigators, collusions with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and the difference between them, collusions, or them, because it's use of location /S, criminally important influence. Has something to do with their roles all along on Walker Hill Road and Ridge Road and the conjunctions to it. I mean, as conjunctions to Route 175. As people all along Route 3 also, which is a conjunction to the state judicial branch offices, which is involved with the World Trade Center attack and wire crime acts and methods and digital crimes, including with a guy with a dump truck, a pickup truck, and their roles with playing football in the field. With that, there's a Mike Kerr and a Joe DeMoro, who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed federal evidences, crimes, collusions, influenced. They tried to make a fake exception with a football game, leaving out their confessions and demonstrations tied to that, and with the judges and prosecutors speaking fake things into records with overt criminal enterprises and private ones in a whole bunch of different countries, like Korea involved now. Because he was involved with my Mr. Murphy, and his daughter has roles with Kevin Harris, involved with Koreans and people with Italians, with medical offenders of kids, sexual and medical and overt criminal enterprises, with like Latino ones, with people with my neighbors, planting evidences with them in the police form at the same time, even if they're unmarked police forms, themed as criminal enterprises. In other words, they have roles with the judges and prosecutors and news, planting evidences, so let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. There was a Trantolo, who's one of the lawyers involved with the networks, making up fake conversations with people, changing their short words with them to conspiracy theories, to take it off the acts. That's what they did to put Trantolo. And Trantolo has roles with proven child abusers, leaders of the kids, where they change it fake what people say over the phone and change it to conspiracy theory. In other words, let's get the guy's name on paper. I mean, let's get the police and courts on paper with the principal being who was in prison for that. I don't know if he still is. But those prisons people, too, are also roles with this. It's a whole bunch of people out of the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices. One of the child abusers, leaders of the kids, confessed the name Lance Cuddy involved. And that's recorded true. I never had a word of conversation with him in my life. There's a Daryl Sullivan in places along Park Street involved with the FBI and Hartford courts and foreign and domestic military affected confessions and requests to help to me, their corruption at West Hartford locations in the roles with the family members, the family members of leaders of kids, like a Dean Judd. His kid is involved with the FBI and former director in foreign and domestic military, including a Kuwaiti general and deans of other campuses that I didn't even go to, involved with predicate acts with fax methods, criminally foreign influence uses of those locations, and influences of all natures of investigations, investigative research, etc., motives, narratives, natures used to screen vaccines. I think